Insiders to On Track with Bill Bibbulmun, the Ozresistance Network Weekly News Roundup. Now, last week we reported on the Muttaburra men, and they appear to have dropped off the radar after the raid up there, and the two phone numbers that the Ozresistance Network have for the Muttaburra men are now disconnected. If anyone can give us an update on what's happening with those guys up there, it's been going on for a long time. Please get in touch with the Ozresistance after the show. Okay, it's been a fairly big week this week. So we've seen Bruce Wilson taking the fall in the Building Industry Royal Commission, Anti-Corruption Union Royal Commission, taking the fall for Julia Gillard, of course, the untouchable Illuminati, Eastern Star, Freemasons, survive again. But we'll see how it all wraps up and what comes out in the wash. Okay, we've got to give a thanks to the Community Law Resource Group in Victoria for giving us the heads up on the SGT report on the interview with Bix Weir, which happened this week. Bix Weir from roadtorooter.com. I don't make up the names, I don't shoot the messenger, but roadtorooter.com. Very interesting what Bix Weir is revealing, and here's some of the things that you're going to hear when you listen to that long report. Okay, firstly, Barclays head of spot gold trading has quit. Zero Hedge released China signs a non-dollar settlement deal with Russia's largest bank. That's very big. Also from Zero Hedge, who needs US anyway? Russia and China finally signed historic $400 billion gas deal. Russia and China. Well. Look out, the USA. Here they come. Okay, now, on the Bix Weir interview, and I'll read the lead-in to the video. Okay, and it's called The Shocking Truth History Channel Can't Broadcast. So when you go to look up this interview, and it's a couple of hours long, I think the original one is an hour, and just type into Google The Shocking Truth History Channel Can't Broadcast, or go to the SGT report site. Okay, and this is what they say about the interview. It's very interesting in itself. The interview you are about to hear contains some of the most shocking information we've ever heard. Our friend and fellow precious metal researcher, roadtorooter.com's Bix Weir, was recently interviewed by History Channel 2 for 3 hours as part of their new documentary-style series, America's Book of Secrets. And that's currently showing on Fox in Australia. The information Bix shared with them on camera was to be aired in the episode titled America's Book of Secrets, Secret Underground. What Bix said on camera was so shocking, after the interview the entire crew told him they were going to pull all their funds out of their bank accounts. But when Book of Secrets, Secret Underground aired, Bix had been cut from the show. Not one word Bix shared with them was allowed to be broadcast. But you can know it all right now. Find out the shocking secrets the History Channel could not broadcast. Okay, now Bix Weir blows the whistle on all the malfeasance and manipulation going on in the US financial system. He also exposes the DTCC, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, and the fallacy surrounding the billions of transactions carried out every day. Okay, then he moves on to revealing that the silver fix comes to an end on August 14, 2014. Okay, now that's worth hearing just about that alone. We're going to go now to the interview and play about 8 or 10 minutes of that interview, which is really compelling viewing, so just hear this.
99% of all mortgages in the world, yes folks, even yours, your payment may go to Bank of America or Wells Fargo. Your payment may go to your local bank, a small bank. But is that true, Bix? DTCC holds legal title to 99% of all mortgages in the world?
Well, here's what happened. All the mortgages are bundled up and sold off into mortgage-backed securities. Those mortgage-backed securities all the paperwork and all the title is held by the DTCC, who transfers it over to seeding companies. So that's how they get a hold of your mortgage. And even the banks, all the documentation and all the ownership responsibility is signed over to the DTCC, which is the clearinghouse. And you go through all this stuff, and you're like, oh my God, this is a kind of a secret a company that very few people know about, and it's even a subsidiary of that company. So it's kind of like, it goes to the DTCC, which doesn't like to be in the news at all, and then even past that, it has to go to a shell company called Seeding Company. So it is beyond complicated, and it's the unwinding of this. It's going to get really ugly. And because of the structure, and because all these banks are going to go down with their 10, 15 to 1 leverage, nobody's going to know who owns what, and then Seeding Company will come out of the shadows and say, well, I own it all because it's been signed over to me as the trustee.
Let me ask you this. This was the last question, and I guess you just answered it, but it's so stunning that I think we should flush this out a little bit further. Your question is this: what are the ramifications of the DTCC and their bankruptcy remote entity Seeding Company owning legal title to 99% of all financial instruments in the world? And before you answer, do we need to revise that and actually say 99% of all financial instruments in the United States? Or is it really the world? Because clearly the DTCC is not in charge of settling all world economic transactions. What's happening in Asia, they must have their own settlement system. Am I correct, or do I have that wrong?
It's in transition for everything. They're pulling all of Europe into the DTCC. When you look at China and the financial mortgage-backed derivatives that they own, those are all held by the DTCC. Everything is getting funneled into the DTCC, especially with these new Dodd-Frank regulations that requires a settlement, place for the over-the-counter derivatives. Now it requires clearing, and the DTC is, every time you turn around, they're getting a new appointment. Okay, you're in charge of, swaps and bullion swaptions. Those are the greatest derivatives ever, bullion-backed swaptions. But everything is funneling into the DTCC, and they even take over other clearinghouses. So it's like a giant black hole. Everything's getting sucked, everything around the world. It's not just the United States. So ultimately, that's the goal of these guys, is to suck everything into the DTCC and have it held by this entity called Seed and Company.
Bix, I used the word stunning earlier in the interview because some of this information is so incredibly stunning. It's shocking in its scope, and it would be almost impossible for a new listener, somebody who has trusted the mainstream media, to join in and listen to this conversation and think that we're not nuts. Somebody who does not understand this language, because literally all of our listeners and you and me, we're speaking a different language. The sheeple people, as we refer to them so often, do not speak this language, and they believe everything coming out of the mainstream media. They believe everything coming out of their government, and they are not equipped to process this information. And for those of us in the know, for those of us who have been paying attention, this truly is the collapse. This is what it looks like, you guys. And so the fact that you can still run out and buy precious metals right now affordably, like $20 silver, is truly stunning when we know that there is a twice daily silver fix, when we know that there is a twice daily gold fix, and now those corrupted enterprises are also coming to an end. Now, Bix, what do you make of the silver fix, which is going to supposedly come to its conclusion and end after 100 years, nearly 100 years, on August 14th? Is it going to make a hill of beans a difference? Because there is no rule of law or justice. So will the manipulation actually end?
Well, it throws a gigantic wrench into the rigging mechanisms that they use, because the silver fix, it's fixed once a day in the morning in London by, I think it's 3, or it was fixed once a day in the morning by 3 banksters. And they sit around and they choose what the price is. And truthfully, when you think about it, it's the only price point, the only physical silver benchmark in the world, because there's no other exchange that has a physical component that the LBMA was supposed to. The COMEX is futures and options. So when they say they're closing the London fix, where will we get our price for silver? We'll get it probably from the COMEX, which is futures and options. That's not the physical price. So it's kind of, it throws everything into a washing machine of trouble for the bad guys, especially because every single silver derivative contract that is based off physical silver has language in it that says, settling language, which references specifically the London Fix as the benchmark value. And you're talking about billions and billions of silver derivative contracts that now are going to go bad starting August 14th. And Jeffrey Christian is kind of up in arms about this because he's the guy with Robert Rubin back in the 80s who really started the gold and silver derivative complex. And now these contracts are so incredibly complicated, and they talk about bullion and bullion swaptions. It's like an option on swaps for bullion. And they're all based off the London Fix, and now they're going bad. And it's interesting because even the group that set the London Fix, when they announced that they're closing on the 14th, says, we take no responsibility for anything after the August 14th date, and we believe everything needs to be settled up between now and then. So after August 14th, there will be no physical price of silver coming from a physical exchange. And it's really scary for those who deal in derivatives and options and all that, because all these contracts that are based off the benchmark price, the London Fix, now have nothing to go off. And they can't, how do they take it to court when you've got a contract that says you have to pay me X amount because it's based on this London Fix price, which no longer exists?
I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but I'm going to tie it back to this German documentary. It aired on the news in Germany, and it was about gold price fixing and manipulation. Koos Jansen brought it to our attention, and I mentioned this earlier. The headline was "Gold Price Fixing Manipulation Goes Mainstream on German TV." And I just want to share a couple of quotes from that Bix, because the fact of the matter is the rest of the world has already woken up. The rest of the world knows. And this German piece on the gold fix is evidence of that, right? And I'm going to just read a couple of quotes. The futures market intended to provide predictability and stability for futures prices is controlled by the following three banks: HSBC, Citibank, and JP Morgan. Their tools, paper gold securities. Then they quote a trader, Thorsten Schulte, who says, quote, "It is possible to simply sell scraps of paper, thereby creating fear, especially among those who possess gold in its physical form, and who then may arrange to sell their metal, eventually resulting in a wave of fear," end quote. And then Dimitri Speck says, quote, "Gold is the opponent of debt-based monies, and in particular, the US dollar," end quote. The fact of the matter is that no matter what happens on August 14th, the rest of the world knows about this Ponzi scheme. And the genie's out of the bottle, and nothing is going to change for the powers that be. It's only going to get...
Well, there we have it. The Russia and China forming a giant trading bloc. The price fixing on gold and silver coming to an end in August 14. The US financial system looking very shaky indeed. This could be the big one, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, our dodgy public officer of the week this week is Justice Michael Adams from New South Wales, who this week trashed free speech when he ordered Shane Dowling to remove videos from the Kangaroo Court of Australia website. And those videos, of course, reveal the nexus between one of Kerry Stokes' lawyers and a Supreme Court judge. How cozy. Well, Justice Michael Adams is also presiding over a number of cases known to the Ozresistance network. A couple of freedom fighters involved with that dodgy judge as well. Good luck with that. Okay, this week the Ozresistance network released the InfoWars interview and documentary on the pending disarmament of the American population. You can see that video firsthand on the InfoWars website, or by going to www.ozresistance.com, where you can also view that video. And that ladies and gentlemen, is compelling viewing and a real-time demonstration of how the American military intend to disarm the American population by force. Okay, now our special guest for this week is actually from another network, the ABC Big Ideas program, interviewing a series of prime ministers. And this week interviewed Malcolm Fraser, and we've taken a piece from that interview. As many of you would know, Malcolm Fraser these days is trying to pass himself off as a human rights activist. Now, just how genuine and forthright and powerful he can be will certainly be able to be tested in the coming months, because human rights is something that's certainly gone right out the window in every state of Australia and every territory as well, and is not being upheld by the Queen. Now, Malcolm Fraser, interestingly, recently resigned from the Liberal Party, quoting that they'd moved so far to the right and become so alien that he cannot any longer bring himself to be a member of the party. Now, here's a few minutes of that interview between Malcolm Fraser and Simon Longstaff of the ABC Big Ideas program. Very interesting.
In a country as large as Australia, governments have a role, I think, in helping to build Australia as one country, to make sure that people aren't left out of essential things that are important in a modern society. And because we're a large and in many ways very sparsely populated society, that means government should do things which probably in England governments wouldn't do.
Is there anything that you see government, the Commonwealth government, doing now that it should not be doing in terms of its scope of activities? I know there's lots of things you think they shouldn't be doing in terms of policy, but on this question of the role of government, are there areas where they shouldn't actually be making policy at all?
Probably. I find it hard to think of one right at the moment. You spoke of the Constitution. Our Constitution actually is a very odd one. It was an agreement between the British Parliament and the states.
Yes.
A division of power between the Commonwealth and the states, sanctioned by Britain. There are no human rights protections in our Constitution. The High Court has ruled that if the Commonwealth government wants to, it can rub out any common law right. So those who say that the common law protects your basic rights for freedom of speech or association or whatever, it's just not true.
So I take it you support a Bill of Rights?
I now support a Bill of Rights very, very strongly, because it's been demonstrated and especially with the kind of powers given to the Commonwealth, and this is something which they should not be doing, under the anti-terror legislation. Now, any one of you here, somebody could come in that door, tap you on the shoulder and take you out. And then you'd be kept in secret, interrogated. They don't have to think you've been guilty of something. They only have to think you may have observed something which might be of interest to them in their anti-terrorist inquiries. And you're not allowed to ring up a husband or a wife or a child or a lawyer. You're held incommunicado while you're interrogated. And if you answer appropriately, I suppose you're released. Now, nobody knows how often this has been used, because if it's reported, the person who reports it goes to jail for 5 years. If you're a husband and you talk to your wife about it when you have been released, that technically is an offence that could put both of you in jail for 5 years. So these are intrusions on normal civil liberties, and there are many, many more in that anti-terrorist legislation. They weren't opposed by either party. They just went through. And the powers given to the Commonwealth under that legislation really is an absolute outrage.
It was the exercise of those powers which in part prompted the great loss of life during the English Civil Wars, and the liberal ideals themselves were in part designed to act against just such things. So I think we could agree that it's certainly inconsistent with liberal philosophy to have enacted such laws. But I wonder, in the realities of politics, particularly when you're exercising public power as a Prime Minister, are there times, such as those concerning national security, where such measures are justified, where you would set aside your philosophical commitments in favour of some other good, such as security? Because even the United States, that great bastion of liberty, has suspended habeas corpus under their Patriot Act.
Well, they've done many other things also, which...
we'll come to them in a minute, but let's just stick with... Because I know we will talk about this.
For Australia, all right.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine you ever having enacted such laws?
I wouldn't have.
You would not have done it?
No. Look, when there was a terrorist incident...
So, there you have it. He's probably wrong on one part there. I think he might have been able to think of something where the federal government shouldn't be making policy, and that is interfering with common law and interfering in the High Court. The total collapse of the separation of powers, which we've seen unfold in this country and pick up pace in the last few years. Now, that's it for our program today. If someone had just a bit more on that, though, if someone had told me 20 years ago I'd be quoting Malcolm Fraser and reproducing one of his interviews, I would have had them committed to an insane asylum. Such a funny world we live in today, out in the political landscape. Or perhaps he's making his peace with God now for his sins of the past. Who knows? But I'm your host, Bill Bibbulmun, and you've been watching On Track. And until next week, stay active, stay safe, and keep up the good fight.